Hello people, in this video we are going to discuss about the types of government. We have several types of government in the world, that is, every country has a form of government by which they are getting governed. Now let's see, we are taking the few famous types of the governments in the world. Well, there are hundreds of them, but we are taking only the few which are quite prominent. The first one is the anarchy. Anarchy is a form of a government where there is no central government. So you can say if there is a land and we have several people here, so in case of anarchy you will find no central authority, so there is no government here. Everyone is independent in himself and whatever they want to do they can do, and this will be called as the anarchical kind of a government or an anarchical kind of a rule. In anarchy there is no government and each individual has absolute liberty. Now let's take the another case. Here it is the Gerontocracy. Gerontocracy is a form of a rule in which an entity, or that is the country or the state or the society, is ruled by leaders who are significantly older than most of the adult population. Well, it simply says if this is the country and these all are the people, they select few of the guys here, few of the people who are quite older, who are quite elderly amongst them. Let's say these three guys are quite elderly, maybe in their 60s or 70s or maybe 80s. So these people will sit on the chair and they will be taking the decisions for the behalf or on the behalf of the society. That will be called as the Gerontocracy. Gerontocracy is something that we usually find in several countries, though not officially, but still we can find such kind of things happening. For example, in India itself is a case of gerontocracy, where you may find that the president of India or the prime minister or maybe the vice president, including many of the chief ministers, these guys are usually, or rather majorly, they are above 60 years of age, most of them, though it is quite unofficial. You can change the thing anytime depending on the votes. Let's see the other case here. It is oligarchy. Oligarchy is a form of a government in which the power effectively lies with the small elite segment of society, distinguished by royals, wealthies, intellectual, it could be a family, it could be a military or a religious hegemony. So in simple case we can say, when there is a society or there is a country, if this is the country and there are several people here, so amongst these many citizens it will be a small group of people only, it would be a small group of people only who will be ruling them, and this group will be selected on the basis of either whether they are rich, whether they have a lot of knowledge, or whether they are belonging to a particular family, that is on the hereditary basis, or it could be a military rule. So that's called as the oligarchy. We find oligarchy in several countries, though certainly not in the official terms. You may find that, for example, in the case of UK, United Kingdom, it's the monarch who rules that, and that is the family of the monarch rule that. So we can say that it is a case of oligarchy. Another thing that we find is technocracy. Technocracy is a kind of government, and as the name itself suggests, techno or something related to technology. Here the people who are engineers, scientists, or they possess certain kind of technical knowledge, they are the ones who forms the government. So in the society, the engineers particularly, or maybe the scientists, or the ones as said having the technology, they will be forming the government, and that government will be called as technocracy. There's another case here, theocracy. Theocracy, again a popular form of a government. Here the government is formed in which the god is recognized as the supreme civil ruler. So it seems quite amazing here. So if this is my society, this is my city or the country, and here all the people says, okay, we are going to grant the god as our supreme power. But the question is, God do not exist in tangible nature. So what to do? So in that case, these people say there should be a middleman known as the clergy, or you could call him as the prophet, or it could be the pope, be the pandits, or whosoever is the one who's considered near to the god and who gives the dictation what God says, will be the sponsored leader who will be ruling the state instead. So that is called as the theocracy. At present we have few countries which are governed by the case of theocracy. For example, Iran, it's mostly a Muslim state. Similarly, we have Vatican City, is governed by the Pope, that is the Bishop of Rome, could be considered as the supreme ruler in a theocracy state of Vatican City. Now let's see the other case. It is ethnocracy. Ethnocracy. Ethno means, or ethnic, you might have heard this word, ethnic or ethno, it relates to a particular community. So that suggests that ethnocracy would be a government by an ethnic group or a race. A particular group or a particular race will be considered as the rulers of such kind of state. At present we have Belgium as an ethnocracy. Here we find the Flemish and the Francophone, difficult to remember words. So these Flemish and Francophone communities, or the ethnic group or identities, I should say identities, are the ones who are majorly ruling this particular country, Belgium. And similarly we have Malaysia. Though Malaysia do not say it as official case, or officially it is not an ethnocratic state, but still you may find that most of the government positions are being governed by the ethnic Malay population, that is the locals of Malaysia. They are governing that state. Now let's see the other case of monarchy. Monarchy, a famous word you might have heard, and usually it exists too. Monarchy is a form of a government in which the supreme power is absolutely or nominally, now consider this word, absolutely or nominally lodged with an individual who is the head of state, often for life or until abdication. What does it mean? It says that there will be a person, there will be a single person. Let's say, just creating this drawing here, if this is my country and these are several of the population here, so amongst them it's only one person who will be considered as the monarch, or would be called as the emperor or the queen, depending on the gender of the person. So it could be the king or the queen who will be ruling that particular country. So such kind of a country, such kind of a government will be called as a monarchical government. Here the supreme person, that is the king or the queen, could be the absolute case, that's all the power lies within him, or he could be a nominally head or nominal head, where it's for the namesake only he is considered as the head, that is not lot of power is considered in his hand, but still he will be known as the monarch. A monarchy usually possesses more checks and balances than an autocracy or a dictatorship. Monarchy is a form of a government where it is quite of a clean society, a clean or a positive kind of a society, where things are governed in a nice fashion and usually the people are happy at the bottom. Let's see the other case of constitutional monarchy. It's a form of monarchy itself, where it says it is a constitutional monarchy, so a monarchy with constitution. In a simple monarchy or an absolute monarchy, as we have seen this, it's a case of absolute monarchy. So it is different from absolute monarchy, where all the power is not lying with the king. Here the power depends on the constitution. It is a form of a government in which a monarch acts as a head of state. He acts as a head of state within the guidelines of the constitution. So whatever constitution says, the monarch has to do, or rather he has to abide by the constitution. This form of government differs from the absolute monarchy, in which an absolute monarch serves as the source of power in the state and is not legally bound by any constitution. So in the case of absolute monarchy, you are not legally bound, but in case of constitutional one, the king is liable to answer the regular citizenry. Well, in general case, the constitutional monarchies are sometimes referred as the limited monarchies or crowned republics or parliamentary monarchies. At present, we have a case of United Kingdom, which is a constitutional monarchy. There's another type of government, and at present, most of the countries in the world possess this kind of government called as the democracy. The democracy, where the demos, the Greek word demos, means the people and cracy means the rule. So the rule by the people. It's a political system in which the supreme power lies in the body of citizens who can elect people to represent them. It's a jargon definition, but in simple way, if we can ponder over, it says the majority of the people. If let's say there are 100 guys here in a country, 100 guys, out of those 100, if 51 people at least say that we want a particular kind of a government, that will be taken care of. So that's called as a government or a democratic government. It is a doctrine that the numerical majority, as we said 51% at least, of an organized group can make decisions binding on the whole group. Now this is a typical situation. So what we are saying is, if 51 guys says we want, let's say, X person to be headed, and 49 says that we do not want X, or they support Y, let's say, so X will be considered the boss and X will be ruling even those 49. So it's the rule of the majority. So it could be considered as the negative part of democracy, that the minorities are not heard in that fashion. Now there is another kind of a government, or the quality of a government, or a quality of a democratic kind of a government, called as the republic. In a republic, it is a political system in which the supreme power lies in the body of citizens who can elect people to represent them. That is, as we have just said in the case of democracy. And also, that is point 1, and point 2, also a form of a government whose head of state is not a monarch. That is, he is not a king or a queen. Rather, he will be called as the president. Usually he is called as the president, and he will be considered as the head of state, and the ruling of president is usually limited maybe for 4 years or 5 years, or whatever the constitution or whatever the people of the country suggest for him. In case of monarchy, usually these years are not limited. The monarch usually lives as a king as he lives. There's another case of government called as the cratocracy. Crato means the size, or rather the strength of the force. So you say that the government by the people who are strong enough. So if there are, let's say, 100 guys here, and out of these 100 there are 2 guys, or there's one guy who has a lot of power. He could have a power because of money, or bodyguards maybe. So because of these kind of people, he has a lot of power and he rules the rest of the people. Then such kind of a government will be called as cratocracy. There's another form of government called as the dictatorship. Dictatorship means a government in which the ruler is an absolute dictator. That is, he rules by the dominance. Or could be because of the charisma. He becomes the head of state, and he's not restricted by any constitution or any kind of law or any kind of opposition. So he do not find it, and whatever he wants to do, he can do it in the country. He can do it over the subjects. So that's called a dictatorship kind of a government. And last but not the least, it is a tyranny. Tyranny. It is a form of a government in which the ruler is an absolute dictator, so kind of a dictator, and he is ruling because of the dominance through the threat of punishment and violence. So if you do not work under him, whatever dictates he gives, and if the citizenry do not believe to work or do not want to work in that way, so he may give them punishment, make things done. So that's called as tyranny. At present, even we don't find tyranny in the world, but yes, dictatorship government, we may find that in countries like Chad. It's an African country. Chad, even Iraq could be considered as a dictatorship government, and similarly we have Turkmenistan, the case of dictatorship. There's another kind of a government called as a military junta. I forgot to mention that before. It is a military junta, military junta state. It's a kind of a government, it's a special case where the ruling is done, or rather the governance is done by the nation's military. The military is the supreme head, and they govern, they occupy most of the government positions of political level or the executive level, and usually the hierarchy of the government level depends on the military hierarchy. So the boss of the military will be the head of the government. So this kind of government is called as the military junta state, and at present we have Egypt as a case of this kind of government, and similarly we have a case of Central African Republic, also a case of military junta state. I hope I made these things clear for you. Take care, Tim. Bye bye.